This is We the Sales Engineers Podcast, Show 7. You may not know this, but pebbles do hurt.
Welcome to We the SEs Podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers, with your host Ramsey Marjaba, who's broke his foot on a pebble. Pretty interesting story.
Hey all, welcome back to another show. Pebbles are more dangerous than they appear. And just keep in mind, there is a heroic story behind me breaking a foot on a pebble. I said it. If you want to know the story, if you're curious, hit me up. When you see me, ask me about it, or leave a message in the comments, and I will tell you my heroic story on an upcoming show. It involves me running barefoot on gravel. That's not when I broke my foot, but anyways, I'll leave it at that. Today's guest is Todd McCullough, who at the time of the interview, he was the SE manager at Avast for North America. He kind of covered worldwide, but he has since moved to Trend Micro. I really enjoyed talking to him. He has a lot of knowledge. He's been doing this forever. It was a fun conversation. He didn't sugarcoat everything, and you can tell what he thinks about salespeople. So before we move on, I wanted to thank all of you. I published my first episode on April 30th, and so far I've had over 120 downloads. As of today, which is the 31st of May, I have 23 downloads in total. 119 of them are in May, so I really appreciate that. I know you don't think it's much, but considering I didn't have any listeners April 29th, I think that's a good improvement to where I initially started. It's an actually infinite improvement from where I started, and I really appreciate that. I do want to double the number for June, and I need your help to do that. Subscribe to the newsletter. Follow me on LinkedIn. The page is We the Sales Engineers. It's fairly simple. I'm trying to create a community of sales engineers so we can all work together. We can all learn from each other. Not all sales engineers are competitors or in competing industries or competing companies. So we can work together. We can learn from each other a lot. And if you leave a rating or review wherever you listen to it, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, I would appreciate that as well. The show notes for this show can be found at www.wethesalesengineers.com/show7. Feel free to start a conversation there as well. Okay, done the self-advertisement. Here's Todd. Hey Todd, welcome to the show.
Hey Ramsey, how's it going?
It's good. It does feel awkward after talking for 5 minutes to start over and saying welcome to the show, but thank you for joining. I appreciate you being here. Let's start off like the same way I've started off the rest of the interviews. Who are you? Why are you? Why did you decide to become an SE? And what's your career trajectory was like?
Oh, okay. So we'll start at the start of my career. Moved to Ottawa, became a field tech. My specialty was Linux. So I worked for a company called Decision One, basically floating around Ottawa, repairing anything under the sun. At one point, I was probably the only person qualified to fix a thermal imaging printer at the Ottawa airport. Soon after that, I went to a little company called Nitrosoft Linux to do professional services. Nitrosoft Linux gravitated into a company called Enable, and then we kind of flipped into the software business, selling an RMM solution to managed service providers around North America. The original version leveraged the Big Brother engine, and we soon replaced that and developed our own, and the solution became N Central. Now, what I did during that time is I worked on the development team. I headed up the build engineering, system engineering teams. I did that for about 8 years. So I was an integral part in designing the operating system that the platform sat on. At about 7 years into that, I kind of became bored, stagnant. The director of development that was in charge at that point, he didn't want to go ahead with a few ideas I had, so I became a little disgruntled. Now, when the vice president of sales, he gave me sales engineering, and I really had no idea what that was. I knew it wasn't tech support. I knew it wasn't development. And that's kind of how I got into all this racket. So from there, me and another guy by the name of Jamie Smith, we the sales engineering team, hiring a bunch of people. And about 4 years into that, I was offered a role to go overseas. And you got to appreciate this was in 2008 when the recession was going on. So Enable needed to expand into other markets. So I moved to England, set up the sales office there. So there was three of us, the outside sales rep that would get us all our warm leads, our sales guy who would work the leads, and of course me, the sales engineer, would then walk through the trials, handhold, do the onboarding. Basically, the technical person that would show the individual or the prospect on how this solution operated. Soon after that, I moved to Australia. I did the same thing. I trained my replacement. And then when I came back to Ottawa, I headed up the mid-market team at Enable. A little thing about RMM providers is they always say they do not go direct and they're channel friendly. That's not really the case. All RMM providers will go direct, but they do it in a secret fashion. So I was on that team, and that's when I got my mid-enterprise. So our sweet spot was anywhere from 500 employees, or 250 to 500. So selling to EDU, financial institutions, etc. And that's where I kind of really honed my proof of concept or trial experience and engaging the individual customer, and also where I learned it wasn't so much important to flog the technology as it was to have a relationship with the person you were trying to sell to. 9 times out of 10, if you foster a good relationship with that individual, they would buy from you regardless of if there was technology concerns, like i.e. the solution didn't do everything they wanted. They knew they had that relationship with me, and I could kind of stick handle that through product management. And after I left Enable, I went back into tech. So I went to a company called Ross Video, senior Linux administrator. After Ross, I went to a little company called Nuance. And by little, I think it's an $8 billion company. They also developed the engine in Siri, the voice recognition. Everyone thinks Apple did it, but it's not. It was Nuance. And I was the Linux guy over there. And then after that, I went back to Enable for just under a year, long enough to see them get purchased by SolarWinds. And from there, I went to Avast. So now I head up the sales engineering team. So that I have 6 direct reports in North America, plus all the entities abroad globally are dotted line to me. So I do the global as well. And that gets us to today. How's that for a long answer?
Oh, that was very good. I have so much questions right now. So let me start at the top. So you mentioned system engineering.
Yep.
So generally speaking, when people say system engineering, it could be like actually, I'm getting feedback again.
Oh, really? All right. So
yeah,
system engineering.
Yeah, you mentioned system engineering. Generally speaking, system engineering could mean like sales engineering, but what you were talking about there is not actually sales engineering.
No.
Right.
Not in any way possible. So when I say system engineering, like the N Central, that was the product at Enable, was based on Linux. Now, in order to kind of give everyone a CD that pop in a computer and it would install everything, the software would be up and running, all that in the back end had to be developed. So basically, There was a build server that would go out and cross compile across Solaris, Mac, Windows, grab all those packages, scoop them up, build them into RPMs, and then basically stick them on a CD. And it was based on Kickstart, and then would auto install the operating system. So all that back end stuff that the customers didn't see, that's what I did.
Okay. So I just want to avoid any confusion. When you say system engineering, it does not necessarily mean sales engineering, and I find that confusing in our industry quite a bit. But
I find in our industry we trade acronyms like it's like they're hot potatoes. Like and nobody's the same thing. Like just the other day, I met a technical account manager who is basically a partner account manager, but he's the technical guy. So, but in other companies, that might be a sales engineer, right? So it's I don't know. I don't think we've ironed down the nomenclature right in this industry, and depending on what company you go to, it's a different name for everything.
Yeah, maybe we should start a standard body and start.
I think so.
Giving names. Well,
and stop calling technicians engineers. They're not engineers. Engineering ring.
Nope. Well, yeah. I think nobody outside of Canada wears an engineering ring, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So unless you're making concrete, you don't get that word.
That's right. All right. So you mentioned onboarding. Is that a post-sales kind of role? What is it exactly?
Well, so it's an interesting question because right now at Avat, so in Europe or EMA, they do all the onboarding first before a customer ever signs. So they'll do a presentation to show the product, which typically leads to a technical demo, which will then lead to a trial. But during that, the sales engineers abroad will configure, auto dial in the system, do all the training, get the partner to go through the certification process, deploy to a few, absolute understanding how the product works, and then they sign the contract. Whereas in North America, we do things completely opposite. We push them to a trial. My sales engineers will help them configure it a bit, and then we try and force a PO down their throat. And then when they sign it, then we onboard afterwards. So we have our 30, 60, 90 with very choreographed steps that are taking place to make sure that that customer is successful with the product. We find, our trial to close rate was about 76% last year. It went down slightly, and in Europe, it's a bit higher. So I think what we're going to do is adopt the way the Europeans do things and see if it works better in North America.
It sounds like, logically speaking, it adds a little bit of more value if you get entrenched in there and get all the work done. Like at that point, it's hard for them to get you out if you're already installed. However, it is risky in that sense. So, do they?
It's time consuming. So that's a problem. Even if they're not going to buy. So I think during the discovery process, even before they get, I think typically it's a salesperson's responsibility, but they always have habits. And I find the sales engineer is a better barometer of whether the sale is going to go through. So in the mid-market space, if you were to sell there, mid-enterprise, they have a budget. They know exactly where they're going to pull the trigger. So they'll spend a few months doing their work or researching and trialing products, make up their decision, and come back to you a year later. In the MSP space, typically the sales cycle is 45 days. So if you sit there and kick the tires, or they kick the tires of the product, they're evaluating 4 different vendors, then it's anyone's game. But to your point, yeah, it does become a little more stickier. But so what's the magic thing here? Do you spend all that time working on something that's not going to go, or you know what I mean? So it's kind of, sometimes you spin your and back to the barometer analogy, it's up to the sales engineer to figure out whether he wants to waste his time, because if he knows this isn't going to go anywhere. So during that discovery, the right questions have to be asked. If hey, we're looking at buying in 8 months. Okay, well, I'm not going to help you a lot, but I'll help you. Versus the person that's like, I have to pick a product in 20 days, help me. Well, then you're going to invest your time there.
Right. So, okay. Again, a lot to unpack. You mentioned 45 days is your sales cycle in North America or in Europe?
Well, in North America, typically we're looking at 45 days. In Europe, it can be anywhere from 60 to 90 days.
So you actually you are able to work on more opportunities in North America, I would say, because of that, which could possibly lead to the lower percentage of sales closed. Is that accurate?
Yep, exactly. I think we used to, back in the heyday about 3 years ago, we used to run about 60 to 90 trials a month. That I think 33% of them would actually close, which was okay. But Avast acquired ABG. ABG acquired LPI level platforms, so there's been a lot of transition. So that's affected sales with the organization. But now the acquisition's over. All the internal stuff has been done to kind of amalgamate the company within the Avast engine. So we're pulling out of that transition, and we're really doing well now.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
So 60 to 90 trials a month, is that worldwide?
That was worldwide, yeah.
Okay. Well, that kind of freaked me out if it was just for Ottawa.
No, so there was about 3 years ago, I think we had about 14 sales engineers globally. Now we're down to 11, I think.
Wow.
We did some shifting markets. We used to handle Brazil. We kind of got rid of Brazil and went to a distribution model. And rest of the world past EMA is in a distribution mode too. So the disties like Ingram and Cynex, they handle all the heavy lifting.
Okay. So you mentioned ask the right question. I'm curious, how many products do you have that you sell?
So we basically have three core products. So we have our antivirus. Now the antivirus it really speaks to the consumer side of the thing. That's 80% of our revenue. But then we have our SMBs, which we sell a whole pile of products in there. One is AV. So there's a cloud version, there's an on-premise version of the Avast engine, which is an amalgamation of the AVG engine. Plus, we have an RMM solution, so that it's called Managed Workplace. So that sells to the MSP. Then we have what's called Cloud Care, which is another cloud-based AV, which has remote control in it. So it's kind of like a mini RMM solution. It also has ESS, email security services, and online backup in there. And that is sold through a reseller model. So if you want to resell to your customers AV and online backup, you would subscribe to Cloud Care. But if you're a managed service provider and you wanted to bring an RMM solution to provide your customers, then you buy Managed Workplace. Now, under all that, we also have SSO, which is a product based upon Centrify. We also can resell Infrascale, which is an online backup solution as well. We have a lot of different solutions that we can sell in what we call the Avast stack.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. They're all security oriented. So do you expect your SEs to be experts in every single product that you have? Or do you have like a overlay or consultants?
I used to use subject matter experts like SMEs on the different product suites. The problem we ran into, it was very hard to build a compensation package based upon the different products because the sales team spans North America. So, and how do you track that? So I moved away from that, and basically all my SEs are jack of all trades. They know Cloud Care, they know AFB, they know Managed Workplace. For the Infrascale and the SSO products, we leverage their sales engineers to help us with the deals because there's just too many products to be experts in everything.
Okay, so that leads me to my question. Maybe I can give you a bit of background about what I do. I have around 10 products in my portfolio, and each one has a billion different technology combinations. So let's talk about one that could be like you would know a little bit about possibly, is our security testing equipment. We call it Cyberflood. It does traffic generation for layer 4, layer 7, and it does some it does a lot of malware attacks and that sort of thing. In addition to that, we have LTE testers. We have layer 1 to layer 4 testers. We have Wi-Fi testers. So the reason I'm asking about ask the right question is, me as a generalist SE, if I don't know what the customer wants ahead of time, like before a discovery meeting, if I don't have a bit of an idea, so I don't know what product I need to actually research and learn a little bit more, I find it hard to ask the right question. So, which kind of leads me to, how do you know what the right question is when your engineers are going to talk to their customers?
Well, and I think that really speaks to sales discipline. Like the salesperson is the one that drummed up the lead. So it's really their responsibility to brief the sales engineer on what they're going into. Now, that being said, I've often gotten into these calls or these meetings where it goes 180 degrees what the salesperson said. So you got to be very flexible. And if you're dealing with a tool that you're not really up to speed on, then you have to be completely transparent. And I have many a times gotten into those situations and said, I'm not the guy, but let's set up a follow-up call. Let's not waste anyone's time on that right now. And I'll get the right person on the phone for exactly what you need. It doesn't happen often, but sometimes it does. And this comes to relationship building too with the customer. If you're honest with them right off the hop, they're going to want to do business with you because they know you're being transparent and you're not just trying to shovel something down their throat.
Well, that's a very good point. And I do it quite a bit. But my question here is, are all or most customers okay with coming to another meeting if the first one wasn't as fruitful as they expected?
Yeah, well, sometimes not, and that's when a sales engineer can get on someone's radar, like i.e. the director of sales or the vice president, when the SE kind of screwed up the deal. But it always comes down to communication with the salesperson as well. Like, and if you don't have a good chat or a good relationship with that salesperson, situations like you just described will happen. So it's important to ask the right questions on that discovery call and make sure it's hammered out. I typically want all my sales engineers on the first call right off the bat, even if they're not going to get into a demo or anything, just to sit there and take notes, because 9 times out of 10 we're going to hear something a lot differently than the salesperson will. And when you get off that call, you regroup and you go, hey, you know what? I know he said that, but that's not really what he means. And, the sales, no, he needs email security services. No, he doesn't, and this is why. So if you have a good, healthy relationship with the sales guy you work with, typically that stuff won't happen, but it can.
Yeah, we have a mandate at Sparent that if the sales guy is saying something that's not completely true, and lucky for me, I have a very good sales guy. Not very technical, so he lets me do most of the answering of the questions. But
Right.
if the sales guy is actually saying something incorrect, that I have to correct it in the meeting in the most polite possibly way. That's not correct English, but you know what I'm trying to say.
No, absolutely. And you know what? When I was at Rock Video, I'll never forget it. I was on a call. I was demoing a product because we want to bring, and the SE got on the phone, and I'll never forget it because it was the perfect example of what not to do as a sales engineer. This guy cut off the salesperson. He was rude about it, basically berated him on the phone, and told us as the prospect of how, no, this isn't going to work that way, and blah blah blah. Like, he totally screwed up that entire deal. We didn't deal with that vendor after that because of that one sales engineer. So having the right tact is also important too.
Yeah, I've seen customers actually tell me they don't want to talk to a specific engineer because he makes them feel stupid as well by like doing stuff like that.
Well, sure, you can't do that, right? You have to have some kind of sales acumen, so you don't come off as a pompous jerk.
Yep. I want to come back to relationship building and maybe prepping for a POC. But I'm actually curious, and we can either leave this in the interview or not if you don't want to answer it. But you don't know me, right? We've never met before. I just messaged you on LinkedIn to see if you wanted to do this, and you said yes. No hesitation, no nothing. I'm curious, why are you interested in doing an interview like this for a podcast that you've never heard of?
Yeah, well, I wondered that myself, to be honest. And then I kind of went, well, why not? I've got almost 20 years of experience in this, and it'd be nice to share some of my experiences that I've had, the do's, the don'ts, because, getting into sales engineering, it's not like you sign up, go to college one day and, okay, I'm going to be a sales engineer. You virtually just kind of skip into it because you're an extroverted person. You can, you just like engaging people and you like technology. And that's kind of why I flip-flopped in my career, back to sales, back to technology, back to sales, back to technology, because you have to keep current. And that's one thing I'll say to anyone listening to this. If you're a sales engineer and you don't go back to getting into tech every now and then, you're doing yourself an absolute disservice because you'll become stagnated and your skill set will be focused on one core solution. So, every good attribute or quality of a sales engineer is, 1, to be extroverted, 2, to be engaging, and 3, to know technology. So back to your question, why not? If anyone can take anything from what I'm saying and learn something, cool. So that's kind of why I'm doing this.
Well, I appreciate that. Hopefully whoever's listening can also appreciate that. And usually I have a question at the end is, what advice would you give SEs that you feel they don't get from anyone else? And I think you just answered it. No, I've never heard anyone tell me to flip-flop between being a sales engineer and going back into technology. So that is an interesting advice and something that I really have to consider going forward. You just changed my career trajectory. Thanks.
Hey, see, you learned something.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm doing this, so I can learn stuff. All right, let me start with this then, or halfway through it, we'll start with this. What do you think is a good SE?
Someone who gives a shit. and let me explain. So I have an employee that I hired 2 years ago. It doesn't matter if he's having a bad day, he's got in a fight with his fiance, or his car blew up, whatever. This guy is always engaging. And what I mean by engaging is, it doesn't matter who comes to him, he will go above and beyond to help that individual, whether it be sales, whether it be product management, whether it be support. That's the quality of good sales engineer. The quality that's not a good sales engineer is someone that's been at the role for better half of 10 years, who's grumpy, doesn't want to be there, and basically holds the organization to task because of their mood of the day, right? So you need to be available wherever you are, anytime, any place, and don't get grumpy because you got to take a call at 7 a.m. or one at 7 p.m. If you got a good boss, he'll tell you to go home early and do that call at night. So the quality of a good sales engineer is just that. Be that person that's always going to be there to help out sales.
Okay. So how does that affect anything in the relationship between you and the salesperson? How does that work?
Well, I've always said salespeople, a good sales engineer knows how to herd cats, because that's what working with salespeople is like, herding cats. And setting the expectation right off the bat, you need to learn how to manage that sales individual. And once you've learned that, then your life becomes very simple. They know when you're available, they know when you're not, they know when to put you on good calls or bad calls. But it's just fostering that relationship with them. Salespeople typically have happy years. They don't forecast properly. They don't control their pipe that well. So a good sales engineer is going to get in there and look at their funnel and go, okay, so what do we? Okay, it's Q3 now. What are we trying to solve? What are we getting done? Who can I be proactive in calling and getting some of this stuff going? So it's a relationship, right? Now my guys are aligned 4-1. So it's a little difficult. But what I've done is I've set them up so they're dealing with account managers who are farmers, and they're dealing with new acquisition salespeople. So they're getting both sides of the plate. So they're doing a lot of retention calls, but they're doing a lot of new acquisition calls, and that keeps them current. Um, Sales engineers don't want to get complacent when they're just doing post sales versus pre sales. They need to be doing both at the same time, because there's new features always coming out on the product that they need to know, and they need to know how to dial in the product, which they learn from the post side of things. Some organizations are structured pre and post, and I don't think that's healthy for any sales engineer because they get bored. OTE is also important in how they're compensated too. Sorry, that was a long-winded answer.
No, that's very good, and obviously it leads me to more questions. I like the herding cats portion. Not sure any account manager would like it or agree with you. The self-aware ones might, but so that's gonna be like the quote of the day. So they have up to 4 account managers at one point, and you said they know how to manage their time. How do they manage their time? Like, how do account managers know that this guy is busy at this point? Because every time, like, I'm on Reddit or Quora asking that question, how do you manage your time? They complain about, like, AMs asking them, hey, is your calendar up to date? Yes. And then they schedule something at the same time as something else.
So we had that problem. Now we leverage Salesforce very heavily, sorry. But what I found a solution about a year and a half ago. It's called Calendly. So CALENDLY. And it's $10 a month for each SE. And what it does is they embed this in their signature file. And when they send an email out to a prospect, the prospect can then click that link and it auto books in their calendar. So what they do is they send the link to their sales guys, and the sales guy will send it to the prospect or the customer, and the customer books his own time with you. The guy can. So they don't need to know when your calendar's up to date, because Calendly, basically you set the SE sets up the times that they're available, and it'll auto-populate in their calendar and set them up an email. And I've taken it a step further, and we'll be coming out with this in about 2 weeks, actually, is you can set up a team event where you add the SEs into a round-robin structure. So now all prospects that come to Avast who want a demo can click this link, and it'll automatically go to any one of 12 SEs around the world in their calendar for their synchronized geo. So that's how I've kind of gotten that part fixed.
Nice. So it will provide the customer with options of different times that are available, and they can select and choose the time.
Out of a 5-day week, they can select any time that you've listed that you're available. And if the slot's already taken, it won't give them that option.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, check it out. It's good.
Yeah, I will. I'll actually have a link to it on the show notes of this episode. All right. Well, for me, it's a little bit different because it's one-on-one with my sales guy.
Right.
And it's like that for most of my colleagues as well, where the sales guy can easily just look into my calendar and, select the time. That doesn't seem to matter. But lucky, like I said, I have a good sales guy. And even if he's bad, I can't really say that because it's public and he knows who he is. But no, he's been good. And we kind of work together to figure out a process that works for both of us. So I would say talk to your account manager if it's one-on-one. But I like this automated process where it takes talking and thinking out of it, and it's like Switzerland. You have a neutral party trying to solve your issues instead of you fighting with your sales guy.
Well, sure, but think of it this way: how many times does a sales engineer have to send an email to get a prospect or a customer on the phone? They got to send the email, they got to wait for a response, and then if it's not the time they want it, then you've got 2 more responses going back. Whereas if you send them a link and say, you pick, that is one transaction. Versus
All right, I need to talk to my SE manager. All right, awesome. All right, so we talked about like kind of building relationships with your AM. We didn't go into depth, but I think more importantly, building relationships with the customers is an important topic, which you already touched upon a couple of times. So let's delve into this deeper. How can one build a good relationship with the customer so that if the technology is not 100% what the customer wants, they'd still want to buy from us?
Well, I always like, so we learned in a management class that we have asked here that a team meeting should be no more, and I'll get to my point here in a minute.
Yep.
It should be no more than 30 minutes. In the first 15 minutes of that 30 minutes, should be everyone talking about how their day was or what's going on in their life. And so that's how my team meetings are run. 30 minutes, I have 15 minutes of talking points, and the rest is how's everyone doing. So that can be transported into a customer engagement. Hey, Bob, how you doing? I'm doing all right. Oh, yeah, what's new in life? No, not much. What are you doing this weekend? Oh, I'm going fishing. Oh, what are you fishing for? Take 15 minutes before you get even into the technology and start building that relationship. And then, and this will sound weird, take those notes down and put them into whatever CRM you're using. So if you haven't talked to this guy in 4 months, you bring up the account, and you see those talking points, the first thing you're going to ask him, hey, did you go fishing lately? Oh, cool. Oh, did Susie graduate? Oh, cool. Right? That resonates so much with a customer because they're not just a number anymore, right? They don't think of themselves. They think of themselves, hey, this guy cares about me. And you know what? Okay, these features don't do exactly what I want, but I know I can call him up anytime. I've got his cell number. I got him on Facebook. He's on my LinkedIn profile and he remembers things about me. So I'm not just a number. And if a sales engineer takes that 15 minutes on the initial call to do that, I'll tell you, it speaks dividends or provides dividends. You know what I mean? So that's how I engage people.
All right. Some SEs would argue that this is more of a sales guy kind of work.
Yeah, but technology people don't like buying from salespeople. They're forced to. That's at the end of the day. That's why, right? Salespeople don't speak their language. They don't know the technology, and they're just sitting there and they're focused on a number and when they're going to close. Sales engineer has a duty to make sure that everything works and have that relationship. They're supposed to do it, but I mean, you've been in this industry long enough. Does it happen?
In some cases, my domain is Ottawa, so
Right.
it's very close, and we are face to face with customers quite a bit. So my sales guy is able to build those relationships. But you are right. So a little bit of background about me as well. My sales guy got promoted to director, and for 6 months they were looking for a sales guy to take his position. So I ended up doing the job for 6 months until they hired somebody. And although I had such good relationships with all my customers, they stopped talking to me when they figured out that, oh, he's doing a bit of a sales role at this point. And they were, and I used to work for some of my customers, right? I used to work for Nokia, and I was friends with them. But when I was an SE, they'd love me, they'd talk to me, they gave me badge access, I can walk in whenever I want. As soon as I switched to sales guy, they stopped talking to me. And when they hired the sales guy and I let them know there's a new salesperson in town, we went back to the same old relationship. So you are correct. People don't want to talk to salespeople. Although every company that I try to sell has its own salespeople that are treated differently internally. So it's
Right.
it's a weird situation to be a sales guy. Nobody likes you, but everybody needs you.
That's fair.
All right. Does performing well on a POC or anything like that actually help build the relationship, or
What do you mean performing well? Sorry.
well, let's say you're doing a POC for a customer, doing well on the POC, like getting everything that they need and working, showing them that it's working well. Does that do anything to build the relationship going forward?
Yeah, I think a little bit of it. Like honestly, if you're doing a trial and you haven't asked, okay, what are you looking for this, and you haven't written that down, and then you haven't formalized in your brain, okay, he wants to see these 10 things. I'll start with this one and I'll go through 1 through 10 over the next 4 calls. And at the end of it, he should be happy. Sure doesn't help when the technology breaks in front of them.
Yeah.
But if the calls go smooth and you've got someone that knows technology, then that helps as well, right? Like if you're not sitting there going, "Ooh, I've never seen that before," or "Ooh, that didn't happen yesterday." Like those are things people don't want to hear on calls.
But isn't that what always happens when you're a POC? Things
Yeah,
that didn't happen yesterday. All right. Okay, but you're in a situation, and I'm just being the devil's advocate for a second. You're in a situation where you have a competitor trying to sell to the same customer, and let's say they have the same relationship. What do you do to build to prove you're a better either company, or you have a better, or improve your relationship with them so that if there's a tie in technology, they would choose you over the other ones?
Well, if you're going toe to toe with a competitor that is a Me Too, and what I mean by Me Too is they have the exact same features, they just do it differently, then you know what? It's going to come down to relationship, but it's going to come down to what is more usable. So in those scenarios, you kind of just got to cross your fingers and hope that the UX is vastly superior and they grasp it better. If you're spending most of your time explaining things, and you know the competitor is very point and click and deploys easy, you're probably going to lose that deal. So I mean, great question. You don't always know the outcome, but at that point, if you're dealing with that scenario, that's when it comes down to salesmanship, and heavily discounting usually works.
Yeah, I hate discounting.
So, you know what? At the end of the day, they are spending money. So if you make it a little cheaper for those 3 things they didn't like, on your solution versus the competitor, that might win the deal too. But I typically don't like getting into those scenarios. But I mean, they always happen. So what are you going to do, right?
Yeah.
Just do the best you can do, and get it deployed.
So you're basically telling me I'm not going to win every deal.
No.
No.
Yeah, it's funny. I've worked very hard on some deals where I thought it was a shoo-in, and at the last minute they went, "No, so sad, too bad," and I'm like, "What?" And and that's when you have to and you form a good relationship. That's after the sales guy leaves. You call that individual back up and go, "Okay, what did," and you know what? They'll give you feedback. What did I do wrong? Or was it me, or was it the technology? And they'll tell you. And I think it's important that you do that. Because you just ate some humble pie. You thought you were going to win, and you lost, and you need to know why. And here's the biggest reason why you need to know why. Not for your own self-preservation, but you need to get that information into Salesforce or whatever CRM you're using and directly into product management so it never happens again.
I find a lot of SEs when they lose, including myself, I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but initially when I lose, I take it personally, and I feel like, mate, I don't want to talk to this guy. He kind of betrayed me because we were going such a good way, and he liked me, and he said he's going to buy from me, and then he just pulled the rug right under me. You take it personally, and after a while, you figure out that it's you might want to, even if you take it personally, it'll be beneficial for you to understand why you lost.
Well, sure. And you know what? If he calls you out and says, "Well, because I don't like you," well, that's fair too.
Yeah. I don't think that's ever going to happen, Todd. Everybody likes me. All right. Well, this has been great. We're going to transition to the not so fire round, which unfortunately you've answered a lot of these, so I'll come up with new ones on the spot. Thanks.
No worries.
So, other than a notebook and a pen, actually, do you use a notebook and a pen, or do you use some other tool to take notes?
So, okay, a little side of me. I've had so many concussions in my early years. I have no cognizant, verbal, auditory memory, if that makes any sense. So I don't remember conversations unless I write them down. So when I'm talking to a prospect or a customer, I'm dictating everything they're saying, like point form, taking quick notes so I can go back to it. Especially important when you're about to give a demo, because a lot of these people will give you a summary of what they're looking at, but they'll go on this diatribe of endless conversation about something, and somewhere in the middle, they said what they needed, and you've completely forgotten. So as I'm going, I'm writing down notes. Now, if we're talking post sales, I'll have the CRM solution in front of me and I'll be typing the notes. But when I'm doing pre-sales, I'm writing the conversation down so I can go back to it. Because if you hammer back all the points in a demo that they highlighted during that initial intro, you'll impress them. So if you're not doing that, then you're not going to remember everything they wanted to see.
Okay, awesome. So, all right. So you do take notes. You use a pen and a paper based on that information. So what other tool do you recommend your SEs to use?
Well, we've got obviously Zoom. We're using leveraging Salesforce heavily. So when my sales engineers are engaging, I have 11 different dispositions that they can log an activity in the subject line, whether it's demo of this product, whether it's SE call, whether it's education call, with training. So all these things have to, before they even get on the phone, they have to log that as a task to themselves. They don't have to close it. They just need to open it. And then I built a dashboard that breaks down the SE activity across the board. And for me as a manager, that's important because I can then justify why these people are here. My big thing that I've always said to my sales engineers is, one, always be available. Two, always log your stuff in Salesforce so I never get the question of why do we need these people? And if I do, then I can prove why we need these people. So pen, paper, obviously Zoom, and whatever CRM they're using is the three main things.
Do you get pushback from your engineers about using Salesforce and adding tasks or whatever, saying that it's double the job now?
Okay, so when they do a trial, they log a task called trial setup. They link it to the opportunity that the salesperson created, and they create a case. And I've had a special report built that does opportunity and case, so I can see the close win rate. Now, the case is only for them to take notes in. So I said you need to log the case, but you don't have to operate out of the case. Operate out of the case if you want to, just so you can track your progress. What you have to do though is always log the activities when you're touching these people. And yeah, there was some pushback, but I just told them exactly what I just told you. I need to be able to justify your job. So if you're not doing it, you're doing yourself a disservice. So if you're not logging activities and a layoff's coming, the other people that were, well, they're going to stay regardless of how good you are, because you're only as good as how you're tracking your activity. So yeah, to answer your question, yeah, there was initially, but now there's not, and because they know why.
I find it very useful because we use Salesforce as well. If I take notes and I finish the notebook, put it aside, I don't have any more the notes anymore. Or if I'm at a customer site, I don't have it. Whereas Salesforce is always available.
Well, one of my employees in Charlotte, North Carolina, what she does, she's got it she'll take the notes, but it'll be on a sticky, and she'll put it on her monitor, and then at the end of the day, she'll go back to all the activities that she did, and she'll start filling in all the notes that she took. That's her way of working. Whereas you've got some other guys up here, they'll do it real time as they're doing it. I don't police how they get the information in there or how they do it. That's not my problem. As long as they do it, that's all I care about.
Sounds fair. I usually take notes by hand and take a picture on my phone and put it in Evernote. That way it's available. And then it's searchable through Evernote. And I put I don't put all the notes in Salesforce. That's not our mandate. Our mandate is just to show the activity, what we're trying to do.
Right.
And I have Evernote to actually follow what's happening.
Do you use an iPhone?
No, I use Android, but I think it's the Evernote app.
Okay.
You can download it on iPhone or Android. I don't know about Windows phones, but you can download it on most phones. Snap a picture through the app, and it will be a new note in your inbox on Evernote.
Huh, cool.
I found a good training on YouTube for Evernote. If I'll try to find it again and link it on the show notes.
Yeah, please.
Sure. Is there a book or an online resource that every SE should be exposed to?
Oof. I don't know.
That's not an answer I was expecting or hoping for.
um, honestly, I'm just going through my memory here. You stumped me on that one. If I can get back to you.
Yeah, that's fine. We can move on to another one. Oh, you already answered those. All right. Is there a podcast you would recommend, or we can come back to that one as well because that's a resource.
Product what that I did?
Podcast. A podcast that you recommend.
Honestly, I don't really listen to a lot of podcasts, so.
Okay. Well, you agree to do this, and you don't listen to podcasts.
It's true. See how this is ironic?
Yes, this is very. I'm very appreciative, but it is ironic.
Well, because I've got this rule, and I don't think a lot of guys do this enough. I divorce myself with technology when I leave the office, and I go do stuff that interests me, like building things outside, like a woodshed, or I'm building a boathouse right now. But other than looking at my iPhone to make sure a customer hasn't emailed me or my boss, everything else is dead when I'm at home. I just don't immerse myself in technology. I do at work, but when I go home, I'm done.
Yeah, I usually listen in the car. That's the only time I have to listen. At the gym, I can't listen. I have to listen to music.
Right.
But when I have a 2-year-old and a 2-month-old, so there is no time for doing this. Like I have time to do what we're doing right now before and after work, but that's pretty much it.
Right.
The rest is spent with struggling with my kids, trying to get them dressed to leave, or undressed to come in.
That's fair.
All right. Well, the final question of the day. We can go back to the book and resource if you thought of anything. Do you let your SEs use LinkedIn for marketing purposes?
I do. I don't have any objections in them doing it. My biggest objection is, especially when our marketing department tries to force that down my throat, is LinkedIn is for me to, meet different people and message and keep track of my colleagues from previous employers. I really don't like that marketing departments are forcing employees to push out their technology when it's my profile. That's my personal view. Will I do it occasionally? Sure. If my employees are told to do it, I won't enforce it. If they want to do it, they can. But I typically don't like it, to be honest.
Yeah, no, that's you don't like pushing it down there, pushing it down to your engineers, or you don't like them doing it if they want to.
If they want to, they can, but I don't force it, and I don't like pushing it down. If marketing emails them directly, it's up to them. And if marketing tells me, well, this has to happen, I won't enforce it.
Okay, sounds fair. I like that. That's it. Did you want to go back to a book or a resource, or should we just skip it altogether?
Yeah, skip that one.
All right, sounds fair. Just Google. That's the best resource you have.
You know what? What was the? Hold on, I'm trying to think of that website I used to use all the time. It was really good for the Linux community, and I can't think of it right now.
No problem. I can have a vague idea. Use a Linux forum.
Yeah, it was just a forum where all the propeller heads would get in there and just start talking, so you'd get to see a lot of different technologies. And why can't I think of the name right now?
I'm not posting this for another couple of weeks, so if you think about it, you have time to send it to me.
Yeah, let me take a note, and I'll think about it, and maybe I'll just message you later.
This is such an SE thing to say. Let me take a note. All right, well, that's it for me. Thank you. I appreciate it. We're under the hour mark. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you joining me out of the blue. No
worries. And this was fun. Now you'll send me a link to this podcast, right?
Yeah. All my podcasts are on We the SEs or WeTheSalesEngineers.com, and I'll let you. I think it's show 7. That's what it's gonna be. Yeah, you'll be on show 7, so it'll be WeTheSEs.com/show7. I'll send you the link.
Perfect.
And you'll have that. Thank you for your time, Todd. Appreciate it.
All right. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye now.
Another interesting conversation in the books, at least interesting to me. I hope you enjoyed it. I liked his views about building relationships, and the fact that if you're the wrong person on a discovery call, say that you're the wrong person on the discovery call, or maybe not say that, but say that you would get the right person on the discovery call, especially if you're like me and you're a generalist covering 10 different products, each one with a million different combinations. It's a good thing to bring in a specialist. At least you know what you know, and they will be even more trusted, and they'll be viewed as an advisor, and you help them get there. So if anyone's used Calendly, please leave a comment. Tell me about your experience. I have a link to it if you want to try it out. I'm not affiliated in any way. You can find it at wetheSalesEngineers.com/show7. I really appreciate you guys being here. If you think it's useful, please spread the word. Tell at least one human being. Turn to the person next to you. If there's a wall, don't talk to the wall because that's creepy. But if there's a person next to you, tell them about this. And I'll see you guys next week. Thank you guys for being here. This is Ramsey, signing off.